Do you want to learn an energy healing technique but aren't sure which one to choose? Well, pay attention in this video because I'm going to tell you what I think. If you only had one energy healing technique to choose from, I would say learn Reiki. I tried my first Reiki session early on my healing journey, but it wasn't the first alternative healing modality that I tried. I actually found it kind of by accident. There was this friend who was a little bit younger than me by a few years back in the Northeast who would mention Reiki online. She was also a psychic, though, and kind of weird, at least to me then. Now I would probably be the weird one to her. But jokes aside, she would mention Reiki, so I was familiar with the term. And it actually sounded kind of cool the way she was describing it. I didn't really know what it entailed, but I did a little bit. I'm like, oh, and she talked a lot about narcissistic abuse, and especially for empaths. And I was finding out that's what I was. So I did listen to her. So that planted the seed in my head, even though I wasn't completely sold or had a huge desire to try it just yet. Fast forward a little bit, and by a little bit, it could be years. I was getting a massage. I tried this new place because I hadn't gotten one in a while, and there was this interesting lady. She was really good. So I'm like, you know what? She has good reviews. I'll give her a shot. Well, we struck up a good conversation, especially at the beginning, and we continued afterwards as well. I liked the massage she gave me, so I asked her what other services she offered, because by this point I was new on my healing journey. I was like a few months into it, and I was curious. I was open to explore new things. Well, she mentioned Reiki. So I told her, I'm like, I've heard of it, but what's it like? What effects has it had? Do you know anyone who's had success from it or has benefited from it? She said yes, that she gave it to her husband who had a really great session and also helped this guy heal from cancer. I didn't get the full story, but she did say he had really good results from it. So I'm like, okay, let me think about this. Well, after that session, I called my mother and I asked her, I'm like, have you ever heard about this whole Reiki thing? She said yes, and believe it or not, she had gone to nursing school. The part where she was at a community college, she had to take an elective, and she ended up taking Reiki, level 1. She said, no, it's legit. It's well worth a try. So I'm like, okay, what do I have to lose? So I booked the session, and I just went in open-minded. And I think that's really the best approach to trying any healing modality. Just having no preconceptions. That's how I did a lot of stuff, or at least that's how I had the best sessions possible for a lot of stuff when I went in with that mindset. And that's what I still recommend to people this day. It's one of the few beliefs that hasn't really changed for me. So the session began, and it was interesting because early on, I felt a lot of warmth in her hands. I think she started around my head area. I didn't know quite what it was doing or how that was possible yet. I didn't understand the mechanics, but I did feel it. So I was like, okay, it's doing something, even though I didn't really know what yet. The other factor was when I began the session, I was wide awake. I had some good energy. Well, roughly about 10 minutes into it, and obviously I'm not keeping exact time, but around that time, I had gone out cold. I was asleep. I would learn later that it was probably more accurately described as a theta state where you're not quite awake, but not quite asleep, which is really great because I learned down the road that Reiki is one of the few modalities that can help heal your subconscious by going down to that level. The really cool thing about that first practitioner I did it with is she didn't wake me up, even though the session was technically over. She let me come back naturally. And as someone who eventually became a Reiki Master and had done sessions, I don't even know how she did that, how she worked out her schedule to just design it so people could come back naturally. Did she know that they would come back like a little bit over, or how do you know they just wouldn't stay asleep? So to this day, I still don't know exactly how she like can plan it like that. That was interesting. I imagine it's just that if it starts going really over and starts getting very late in the day or runs the risk of bumping into the next session. And that's the thing, she might not have had a session right after me that day, so it wasn't as big a deal. That's it, because otherwise it'd be pretty risky just to say, oh yeah, come back whenever you want to. And yeah, it's hard to like stagger people that way. But when I started coming to, I was like, wow, because it feels like I just came out of a deep slumber, but it was different than normal sleep because a lot of times, especially at that point in my healing journey, I could sleep for like 6 to 8 hours, even over in some cases, wake up the next day and still feel kind of tired. This wasn't the case with Reiki. When I came to, I felt very well rested and I was so relaxed. To this day, I think that's one of the main benefits that everyone experiences because the physical and mental effects can vary from person to person. But I believe, I should say every single one, but in most people, they'll feel more relaxed afterwards and lighter energetically. The tricky part is sometimes the session itself can be intense. Most sessions are generally relaxing. It's hard to give an exact percentage, but I'd say around 90%, probably even more. But every now and then, some emotions can come up or trauma be released, and not in like the light energetic way, the heavy energetic way. But if the person can breathe through it and let go while that's happening, usually at the end, they'll still feel that lightness and relaxation effect. If the person can't do it, it's better not to force them through it. You don't want to jam healing down their throat, no matter what it is. But if they can, even if like the session itself is intense, afterwards they'll feel so much better if they can handle it. I should preface it with that because that's certainly important. I ended up doing another session with her, which was a great experience. At that point, I was hooked. I took Reiki level 1 at a community college near me, and it was a mess. I had a good experience, but it was 25 students, all of them women. The only male was the assistant. Because there were so many people in it, the instruction left a lot to be desired. The attunement was still cool, and we did a nice little ritual with sage when she cleared us off. But she had us buy the book for it on Amazon beforehand. I had found out about it kind of last minute, so I didn't get to read it beforehand. But I did read it afterwards. So I had Reiki level 1 at that point, which wasn't much to go forward with, but I did do some self sessions and I liked them. I was noticing the difference, especially if I would do it at the beginning of my day, how much it helped with anxiety, which I really was suffering from at the time. But at this point, I didn't want to become a healer. I don't want to say I didn't have the desire to it. It was just so far-fetched, I didn't even consider it. I needed to heal myself, though. At that point, I didn't know that. So I actually tried a bunch of other Reiki healers. One was a shamanic Reiki master who I really think had a very cool style. She definitely had a big influence on me, especially early on in my healing career. I know it's a funny term to call it, but for lack of a better one, I think I did a series of 8 sessions with her, and they weren't just Reiki, but they were also coaching sessions as well. She didn't call herself a coach, but she would give me homework and we would have good talks. So it really helped me figure out ways forward because I was really dealing with a lot of difficulties at that time. I remember being very impressed by how intuitive she was. The information she picked up was very accurate. Because of my experiences with her, that influenced me to want to continue learning Reiki. Because I didn't necessarily want to become a healer, but I wanted to increase my intuition and my spiritual gifts and start exploring this side of me. I decided to retake level 1, but at a place where they had also level 2 and the master level. While I was considering where to continue my Reiki education, I had taken a crystal healing certification program, which was advanced because I had 3 levels and was really good. It had a lot of useful information. And I liked it because it could really complement a Reiki session. I didn't know how much at the time, but looking back on it, that was certainly a good move. But that crystal healing teacher was a Holy Fire 2 Reiki Master. It's now a Holy Fire 3 Reiki, which is showing my age, how long ago I was getting into this. But back then it was Holy Fire 2 Reiki. I asked her because I had tried one other energy healing modality at that point, Pranic healing. This yoga studio was offering it once a month where they'd have group sessions and different pranic healers would come in, and when it was your turn, you could get one. I really liked that as well. I had a bit of a difficulty choosing because they both sounded really interesting and they both felt great. So I asked that Holy Fire Reiki 2 teacher what she recommended, whether she thought pranic healing or Reiki was better. She said, well, with pranic healing, don't you have to go forever? And I, I don't know about that, but from the little bit of research I had done at that point, it did look like there were a lot of levels. And Reiki, there was generally 3 levels to it, which at that point, I figured I could get going earlier. Taking into account, at that time, I thought I was just going to be doing it mostly on myself, maybe sharing it with a friend here or there at some point down the road. I had also taken around that time, I know I was going nuts at this point. I was really in my spiritual seeking phase. I was taking a Path of the Mystic class, which was really helpful for me because, as crazy as it sounds now, I was really spiritually reluctant back then. I was self-conscious. It still seemed a little ridiculous to me. But that Path of the Mystic class had opened me up more. They taught, I believe it was an 8-week class, and each one explored a different region, spirituality. The way it was presented was very well done. It was rational for someone who has an analytical mind, and wasn't completely different for me. And wants to see evidence and proof and know what the science behind why it's working. But I really like those 2 teachers. At the end of that series, they announced they were teaching Reiki. I thought, wow, what are the chances? It's also funny because I don't think I knew what a synchronicity was then. As easy now looking back at my path to see how I was led to where I was supposed to be. But at that stage, I still think I needed pushes. I didn't glide gracefully to each universal sign. I was a hard learner. I had a bit of a difficulty learning how the spiritual world works, but I would get a crash course in it for sure as the years would go on. It's funny now because, and this is why it's a good reminder for me. When it's someone else, I could be like, oh, the sign's right there. How could you miss it? But I was missing it. I should not be a hypocrite. I need to remember where I come from, and I usually do. But it's always good to have a reminder. And it's proof that you can change. If you don't think you can excel spiritually or become a healer, if I can do it, anyone can. You would tell it by looking at me, or maybe you can. In that case, you really are intuitive. But I was probably the least likely to succeed as a healer, and I did it. Just because I had that desire. I really was passionate about healing myself. And that carried over when later on I would share it with other people. So I retook level 1 with those 2 teachers, and it was kind of cool being taught by co-teachers. I haven't had many experiences like that. Looking back, I didn't really realize what blessing that was and how it wasn't that common, but I loved the class. And in that level 1, it was small. It was just me and another student. Then they offered their level 2 down the road. They made the announcement they would be doing it And at some point, they told me what it was offered. At that point, I can't remember if there was someone else in it or not. There might have been, and if it was a different student than the level 1. But level 2 was great, and I had gone a level higher. They also announced that they might be teaching a master class. But that for sure, no one else took. I took that as a private, which again, now I realize it was such an honor. It's so rare to have these two people who were really experienced teach me. I mean, there were more teachers there than students. It doesn't even make any sense when you look at it from other perspectives. It was just one of those magical moments that just happens. What I liked about their style of Reiki was they also had a shamanic twist to it because their teacher was that way as well. They also had a mystical aura about them, which really made it feel magical. It might sound cheesy, but if you experienced it, there's no other way to explain it. And I have a feeling you'd feel it the same way. I was so impressed by them too. The male teacher was also a certified massage therapist, so he taught me great posture, so you wouldn't wear yourself out when you were doing a Reiki session. And even though their manuals were a little chintzy, they were very thin. Now the ones I teach out of are much more comprehensive. But even then, they still had some great things I still reference to this day. Depending on the lineage, they call them the Reiki principles or ideals. And I like their version the best. And I've seen different ones. They were also the ones who taught me about the energy exchange, which I've continued to learn is more and more important. I'll tell you one short, funny story that happened between my level 1 and 3. After level 1, we were just supposed to work on ourselves, do self sessions. Apparently, people don't listen because they said, well, if you are going to do it, make sure, and they gave some good general advice. Well, I ended up just offering it to someone, actually a mentor of mine at the time. And it was good, but, it wasn't great. It was nowhere near what it should have been and what I was going to become. Because I didn't engage in an energy exchange, and it's not necessarily my fault. I was just so excited. I just wanted to share it. I'm like, you've got to try this. It's a mistake anyone can make. I mean, I don't regret it. I didn't have bad intentions. So it was a lesson I had to learn. And I got to experience it firsthand. And my teachers shared their similar experiences with that as well. But because I gave that Reiki session away, I lost contact with that person, that mentor, for a little while. I saw a newsletter they sent out later down the road after I had taken Reiki 3, the master level. I reached out and she offered to do an exchange that time. She would do one of her healing modalities on me, and for some reason, she was up for trying another Reiki session. My first one wasn't bad, so I should say that. Maybe that's why. It was probably just relaxing. It was just like a decent massage, that type of effect you get. It's not an actual massage, but you can get a similar feeling afterwards. After that session, and this was when I completed my master level, she said, "Wow, you've gotten much better." So I learned, one, listen to your teachers. They're telling you stuff for a reason. And two, make sure there's always an energy exchange when you're doing a healing modality on someone. My teacher said it doesn't have to be money, but it helps them appreciate what they're receiving. I really recommend that to this day. After that, I fell in love with Reiki and my studies continued. I took oncology Reiki, Kundalini Reiki. I worked with animals, including dogs, cats, and horses. I also took Holy Fire 2 Reiki, which became Holy Fire 3 Reiki right before I took their Karuna Master class. I also went to a lot of Reiki shares, which at the time, they had them all around LA County. This was pre-2020. They had at least one or two a month, usually more. And the community felt much more supportive back then. While I never learned pranic healing, I also learned two other energy healing modalities. Faradharmoni, which is a Persian one, and that had 8 levels of that, plus one or two additional levels that dealt with other things, as well as the Yun method, which they also can refer to as Chinese energy healing. After all these experiences of receiving energy healings from other practitioners and learning them, while I don't want to put any of the other ones down because they're very useful for different situations and different things that people are going through. It's not like there's one be all end all. And sometimes you could even complement modalities, like I said, with the crystal healing and Reiki. But I am glad I chose to learn Reiki. It is simple and effective. In fact, possibly too simple, which is why I think it's so easy to overlook. I was guilty of that because after I learned it, I went on to learn some other modalities. And I would still do my self sessions of Reiki and do sessions for other people. But my attention was also on the shiny new toy. Oh, this new cool modality. It wasn't until years later when I started teaching Reiki level 1 for the first time that it made me remember, oh yeah, this is what it can do. That's why teaching was such a great experience for me, because one, at that point, the manuals were so great, I would pick up something new each time I read it, but also I would appreciate it more and more. No matter how advanced my spiritual and healing practice got, I was always happy to get that refresher to come back and try some of the basics with Reiki. There's this Reiki meditation you learn in level 1, which is really great. It not only helps you learn how to meditate, but it also increases your abilities with Reiki. I believe it does increase the intensity. No matter how much time goes by, no matter what other new modality or technique I learn, I like going back to that, to the basics, because more complicated and more quote unquote advanced isn't always better. Sometimes simplicity is an amazing way to deal with a lot of things. They knew that in Japan when it was widely utilized there. So that's why I vouch for Reiki. Yes, there could be some crazy trends with it, like Reiki talk, but don't judge the modality itself on the practitioner, which is why I recommend, if you didn't have a great experience the first time, try out someone different. One of my friends who I met in a yoga nidra class, she had an average first experience with Reiki. We ended up doing an exchange at some point, and she went pretty far down, and the stuff I picked up seemed to be accurate because it all resonated with her. Which goes to show you there's various levels to it. Granted, anyone can do it, but to get good at it, it's experiential. You really have to do it. A Reiki master who's in integrity will have a personal practice where they're doing the self sessions and have tried the various other exercises that are available for it. I had lost a lot of my spiritual gifts from when I was younger because I had to desensitize to survive. I believe Reiki, through the attunements, placements, and ignitions, started opening me up again. I was doing other exercises and modalities as well that also helped, but I believe Reiki was one of the initial ones that started that whole process. It was very subtle for me at the beginning, especially with that first Reiki class, but I do believe that it's when the shift began to happen, and even mentally just opened me up to considering the spiritual side of our existence. The other reason I recommend learning Reiki is because you're not using your own energy. It's basically universal life force energy coming through you, whether it's down through your crown chakra, or there's some heart-centered practitioners where it just originates there and goes out. So it doesn't drain you. Energetically speaking, you're actually more refreshed and can feel great after giving a session. You can get physically tired. For instance, if you did 5 Reiki sessions in one day, just holding the arms out, and like that'll happen. But besides that, you also heal yourself when you give Reiki. There's other modalities for energy healing where you're using your own. And during my Kundalini yoga teacher training, there was a doctor from New York who came out who was also a yogi. He said those are dangerous. If you've observed the healers that do that, later on, when they reach their 50s or 60s, they can get overweight, have diabetes, just a whole bunch of health problems. You'll never have that with Reiki. This isn't to put other energy healing modalities down or say they're worthless. That's certainly not the case. In fact, other ones can be very effective, especially for different things. But if I had to go with only one, Reiki would be the energy healing modality I would recommend to learn. If you've had a similar experience with Reiki, or a much different one, please feel free to drop them in the comments below to let people know that are considering it what you felt it's really like. As always, with what I said today, take what resonates and throw away what doesn't.